The giant space station looked like a metal city floating among the stars. It was bigger than any moon and had towers that reached out in all directions. Ships from thousands of different worlds came and went like busy insects around the station. Millions of alien vessels waited in perfect lines, their hulls gleamed with colors that human eyes had never seen before inside. The main chamber, Emperor Vexstar, stood on a platform high above the crowd. He was tall and purple with 4 strong arms and eyes that glowed red when he was angry. Today those eyes burned bright because he was about to make the most important announcement in galactic history. Below him sat creatures from every corner of the galaxy. Some looked like giant spiders with crystal shells, others were made of living rock that moved and breathed, some floated in the air without any visible body, just pure energy contained in glowing spheres. The noise they made together sounded like 1,000 different storms all happening at once. Admiral Kang Seok floated in his small ship near the gas giant Jupiter. He had been watching this alien gathering for 3 days. His vessel was painted black to blend with space and used technology that made it invisible to most scanners. The Korean officer wore a simple gray uniform and his face showed no emotion, but inside his heart was racing. For 2 years Earth had known about these aliens. Small reconnaissance ships had been secretly watching them and learning their language. Military scientists had worked day and night to understand their technology. Now finally the aliens were going to reveal what they wanted with humanity. Emperor Vexstar raised his 4 arms and the massive chamber fell silent. His voice was deep and powerful, and it carried across space to every world in the galaxy through quantum communication network. Citizens of the great galactic empire, he began, today marks a historic moment. We have discovered a new species in the outer regions of our territory. They call themselves humans, and they live on a small blue world they have named Earth. Kang Seok listened through his translation device. The alien words turned into Korean in his earpiece, but the meaning was clear. The aliens had found Earth, and they were not impressed. These humans are weak and backward, continued the Emperor. They still burn chemicals to push their ships through space like ancient savages. They fight constant wars against their own kind over patches of dirt and drops of water. They cannot even agree on how to govern their single small planet. Laughter echoed through the chamber. Aliens with tentacles slapped them against the floor. Creatures with multiple heads nodded, all of them at once. Flying beings swooped in circles, making sounds like broken music. The Emperor smiled, showing teeth that were sharp and white. On Earth, Dr. Park Hyun sat in a secret facility buried deep under the city of Seoul. She was a small woman with gray hair and tired eyes, but her mind was sharper than any computer around her. Dozens of screens showed alien transmissions and translated text. Her team of scientists worked at their stations, recording every word. The translation program finished processing the Emperor's speech, and Dr. Park felt her blood turn cold. She had spent her whole life studying these aliens, preparing for first contact. She had hoped they would be peaceful traders or curious explorers. Instead, they were conquerors who saw humans as less than insects. Send emergency signals to all world governments, she told her assistant Lee Bora. Code red priority. Tell them the aliens consider us inferior and are planning invasion. The young woman at the next station turned pale and began typing rapidly. Messages flashed across computer screens in dozens of languages. Within minutes, every major leader on Earth would know that humanity faced its greatest threat back in space. Emperor Vexstar continued his speech. These humans have no unified government, he said. They waste their time with silly concepts like individual rights and personal freedom. They are soft and emotional creatures who cannot make hard decisions. Their technology is primitive and their military forces are scattered and weak. The alien crowd cheered and roared. Holographic displays showed images of Earth that made the planet look small and helpless. Human cities appeared tiny compared to the massive alien structures. Ships that looked powerful to humans seemed like toys next to the Imperial fleet. Therefore, declared the Emperor, the first proclaimed that humans are an inferior species. They do not deserve membership in our glorious empire. Instead, they will serve as workers and entertainment for their betters. We will harvest their world for resources and use their people as we see fit. Admiral Kang Seok gripped his control stick so hard his knuckles turned white. He watched as alien nobles began bidding on human slaves who did not even know they were being sold. The Emperor displayed pictures of human families, and the aliens laughed at how weak they looked. This was exactly what Earth had feared. The governments had prepared for this moment, even though they hoped it would never come. Secret military programs had been running for decades hidden. Research facilities had been reverse engineering crashed alien technology. Deep space monitoring stations had been tracking enemy movements in the underground command center. General Song Minho received Dr. Park's urgent message. He was a veteran soldier with scars on his hands and steel in his eyes. He had fought in 3 wars, but nothing had prepared him for this. The aliens wanted to enslave all of humanity. Activate Operation Rising Sun, he ordered his staff. Contact every military base on the planet. Tell them we are now at war with an alien emperor around the world. Similar scenes played out. Leaders who had been enemies hours before now worked together. The threat to humanity was bigger than any earthly conflict. Every nation understood that they must unite or face extinction. President Kim Jae of the newly formed United Earth Defense Coalition called an emergency session. Every world leader appeared on secure video links. Presidents and prime ministers, kings and chancellors all listened as the alien declaration was played again. They think we are weak, said Kim Jae, his voice steady and calm. They believe our conflicts make us inferior. They do not understand that our struggles have made us strong. Every war taught us new ways to fight. Every challenge showed us how to survive. They see division where we have learned adaptation. The Emperor concluded his speech with a grand gesture. The Imperial fleet will depart for Earth immediately, he announced. We estimate conquest will take less than 1 standard day. The humans will surrender when they see our power and accept their place as servants. What the aliens did not know was that humanity had one advantage: they could never understand humans. Did not break when faced with impossible odds. They got angry, and when humans got angry together, they became the most dangerous force in the galaxy. The Emperor had made his announcement expecting fear and submission. Instead, he had awakened something that had been sleeping in the human spirit. For the first time in their history, all of humanity shared a single purpose: to prove that no one was inferior, to show these aliens what real strength looked like. As news of the alien threat spread across Earth, something remarkable happened. Wars stopped immediately. Enemies became allies within hours. Factories began converting to military production. Scientists shared their most secret research. Everyone understood that this was not just about survival. It was about the right of every thinking being to be free. The aliens thought they had found easy prey. Instead, they had poked a sleeping dragon, and that dragon was about to show them why underestimating humanity was the biggest mistake they could possibly make. 3 days passed since Emperor Vextar had declared humanity inferior, and in those 3 days, Earth changed in ways that no one could have imagined. Every factory on the planet stopped making cars and computers and started building weapons. Every scientist put aside their personal research to work on military technology. Every soldier prepared for the fight of their lives. Admiral Kong Seok received new orders through his secret communication device. His small black ship was no longer alone. In the cold darkness of space around Jupiter, dozens of other hidden vessels appeared from behind asteroids and moons. Ships that had been disguised as space rocks suddenly activated their engines and revealed their true nature. Earth had been preparing for this moment much longer than anyone knew. The governments had been secretly building a space fleet for 15 years, using technology recovered from crashed alien ships that the public never heard about. Military engineers had been studying alien weapons and shields, learning how they worked and how to build better ones. Dar Park Hyon worked without sleep in her underground laboratory. Her team of 50 scientists moved like they were in a race against time because they were the quantum drive engine she had been developing was only half finished, but now she had to make it work in 2 weeks instead of 2 years. The theoretical mathematics are correct, she told General Song Minho as they stood before a massive holographic display showing ship blueprints. If we use every resource on Earth, every factory, every engineer, every piece of rare metal, we can build 50 ships before the alien fleet arrives. General Song looked at the impossible timeline and nodded. Do it, he said. Use everything we have. Convert every car factory to build ship hulls, every computer factory to build navigation systems, every phone factory to build communication devices. The whole planet is now a weapons factory around the world. Remarkable things began to happen. Factory workers who had been making toys started building plasma cannons. University students who had been studying literature began learning how to operate quantum computers. Farmers put down their tools and picked up welding equipment. To help build spacecraft, the aliens had no idea what was happening on Earth. They were too busy celebrating their easy victory and counting their future profits. Emperor Vexstar had already started selling contracts for human slaves to the highest bidders. Noble families across the galaxy were excited about getting exotic pets from the primitive world, but Admiral Kang Seok was listening to every alien communication. His advanced listening devices recorded their battle plans, their fleet movements, and their complete lack of preparation for any real fight. He sent daily reports back to Earth about what the enemies were planning. They have 3 million ships in their total fleet, he reported to the Earth Command Center, but those ships are spread across 10,000 different star systems. The fleet coming to Earth has only 50,000 ships because they think they are dealing with Stone Age cave dwellers. This was exactly what Earth needed to know. The aliens were not sending their full military might. They were sending what they thought was enough to scare primitive humans into surrender. They had no idea that humans did not know how to surrender when their families were threatened young. Engineer Namsu worked 18 hours a day in a converted car factory that now built weapons. He had studied alien plasma technology from crashed ships and discovered something important. Their energy shields are designed to stop other energy weapons, he explained to his team, but they have never faced solid projectiles moving at near light speed. This was the key to everything. The aliens had built their defenses to fight other aliens who used similar technology. They had never encountered an enemy that thought differently. Human weapons would be completely unexpected. In secret factories around the world, workers built railguns that could fire metal projectiles at incredible speeds. They constructed quantum disruptors that could tear apart alien shields. They created stealth systems that would make human ships invisible until it was too late. Captain Oyuna trained with her crew in a hidden base under the Pacific Ocean. She had been selected to command one of the new human warships, and she knew that the fate of Earth might depend on how well she and her team performed. The ship they would fly was called the Guangetto, and it contained technology that would surprise the aliens. Every day brought new volunteers. People from every country on Earth wanted to help fight the invasion. Doctors offered to serve as combat medics. Engineers volunteered to maintain the ships during battle. Even children helped by collecting metal for recycling into weapons. The most important change was not in the factories or the military bases, it was in the hearts and minds of every human being. For the first time in history, all the nations of Earth were working together. Ancient enemies became partners overnight. Religious differences were forgotten. Political arguments stopped completely. President Kim Jae spoke to the world on television. Every person on this planet now has the same job, he said. We must show these aliens that calling anyone inferior is the real sign of weakness. We fight not just for our own survival, but for the right of every thinking being to be free. Meanwhile, the alien fleet slowly approached Earth. They were taking their time because they wanted to enjoy the moment of victory. Their ships moved in perfect formations that looked beautiful and terrifying. 300 massive vessels, each one bigger than a human city. Emperor Vexstar watched the progress from his throne room. He imagined the moment when the primitive humans would see his fleet and fall to their knees in terror. He planned to keep the most interesting humans as personal servants and sell the rest to buyers throughout the galaxy. What the Emperor did not know was that Earth was tracking his every move. Deep space sensors watched the alien fleet approach. Human computers calculated exactly when and where the enemy would arrive. Military strategists planned every detail of the upcoming battle. Dr. Park Hyun made the final preparations on her quantum drive engines. The technology was based on alien science, but improved with human engineering. The drives would allow human ships to move faster than anything the aliens had ever seen. The countdown began. 5 days until the alien fleet reached Earth. 5 days to finish building the human defense force. 5 days to prepare for a battle that would decide the future of two species. On the last day, Admiral Kang Seok received his final orders. Return to Earth and take command of the human fleet. The words were simple, but they carried the weight of every human hope and dream. He started his engines and began the journey. home knowing that when he arrived everything would change forever. The aliens thought they were about to conquer a weak and divided world. Instead, they were flying straight into a trap prepared by a species that had turned their greatest weakness into their greatest strength. Humans had learned to fight together, and when humans fought together, they were unstoppable. The moment arrived faster than anyone expected. 50 human ships appeared at the edge of the solar system. Like ghosts materializing from empty space, their hulls were sleek and silver, reflecting starlight in ways that made them look almost alive. Each ship was smaller than the alien dreadnoughts, but they moved with perfect coordination like a school of fish swimming through dark water. Emperor Vextar received the first reports in his throne room and laughed so hard that his forearms shook. 50 ships, he said to his advisors. We have 300 ships just in the advanced fleet. This will be the shortest conquest in galactic history. Our enemies have sent toys to fight warships. Admiral Kong Seok stood on the bridge of his flagship, the Sejong, and looked out at the approaching alien fleet. Through the view screen he could see hundreds of massive vessels arranged in attack formation. Each alien ship was 10 times bigger than his own and bristled with weapons that could destroy planets. All ships, this is Admiral Kong, he announced over the communication system. Remember that we are not just fighting for Earth. We are fighting for every species in the galaxy that has been told they are inferior. Today we show the universe that no one has the right to call another being worthless. Behind him, Captain Oyuna commanded the Gwanggedo and Commander Park. They led the turtle ship. Every human vessel was crewed by volunteers who had trained for this moment their entire lives. They knew the odds were impossible, but impossible had never stopped humans before. The alien fleet moved forward with arrogant confidence. Their commanders were already planning victory celebrations. Fleet Commander Zork sat in his command chair and smiled as he watched the tiny human ships approach. His vessel alone could probably destroy half of them with a single shot. This is almost insulting, he said to his officers. These primitives think 50 ships can challenge the might of the galactic Empire. We should finish this quickly so we can start the real work of harvesting their planet. But something was wrong with what the aliens were seeing. The human ships were not behaving like primitive vessels. They moved in formations that seemed impossible, shifting and flowing like liquid metal. Their engines produced no visible exhaust, yet they accelerated faster than anything in the Imperial fleet. Impossible, muttered Zorks as he watched his sensors. How do they have quantum drives? Our intelligence reports said they were still using chemical rockets like barbarians. These readings must be incorrect. The distance between the fleets closed rapidly. The aliens opened fire, first sending streams of plasma energy across space toward the human ships. The bolts of pure energy could melt through the strongest armor and had never failed to destroy enemy vessels, but the human ships simply were not there anymore. They had moved faster than the alien targeting systems could track, leaving the plasma bolts to harmlessly dissipate in empty space. Then the humans opened fire with weapons the aliens had never seen before. Elgans launched solid projectiles at speeds close to the speed of light. The metal slugs punched through alien shields like they were made of paper. Each shot was perfectly aimed, hitting critical systems and weapon mounts. Explosions bloomed across the alien formation as their own ammunition began detonating. At the same time, quantum disruptors tore holes in space itself, collapsing the energy fields that held alien ships together. Vessels that had seemed invincible moments before began breaking apart as their molecular bonds failed. 3,000 alien ships became clouds of glittering debris. In less than 1 minute, the human fleet did not lose a single ship. Not one human sailor was injured. Not one human vessel even received a scratch. The aliens had been completely destroyed by an enemy they had dismissed as inferior. Emperor Vextar watched the battle reports with growing horror. This cannot be real, he whispered to himself. They are supposed to be weak. They are supposed to surrender when they see our power. How did primitive humans defeat our finest fleet? Dr. Park Hyen monitored the battle from Earth's command center and smiled grimly as the reports came in. The aliens thought we were primitive because we still had wars on our planet, she said to General Song Minho. They did not understand that conflict makes us stronger. Every war taught us something new about fighting. The news of the human victory spread across the galaxy faster than light itself. Species that had been enslaved for centuries began to whisper about the impossible battle beings who had accepted their fate as servants. Suddenly began to hope that freedom might be possible on worlds throughout the Empire. Alien governors received panicked messages from their superiors. The humans had done something that no one thought possible. They had destroyed an Imperial fleet without taking casualties. This was not supposed to happen back in space. Admiral Kong Seok surveyed the aftermath of the battle. Pieces of alien ships drifted past his viewscreen like metallic snow. He felt no joy in the destruction, only grim satisfaction that Earth had proven its point. Communications officer Cho Yun approached him with a worried expression. "Admiral," she said, "we are receiving messages from across the galaxy. 17 different species are asking the same question. Can we help them fight back against the Empire?" This was something the humans had not expected. Their victory was inspiring rebellion throughout the galaxy. Species that had been crushed under Imperial rule for hundreds of years were suddenly finding courage to resist. The Empire had built itself on fear and oppression, but fear could only last as long as the oppressor seemed unbeatable. Captain Oyuna received orders to lead a squadron to the Andromeda system, where the blue-skinned Kelani people had been enslaved for 2 centuries. Imperial forces were loading prisoners into transport ships when the human vessels arrived. "This is Captain O of the Human Defense Fleet," she broadcast. "Release your prisoners immediately or face the consequences." The Imperial commander could not believe what he was hearing. "You are outnumbered 50 to 1 human," he replied. "Surrender now, and we might let you live as slaves, like the rest of your pathetic species." The battle lasted even less time than the first. The human ships moved between the Imperial vessels like dancers, their weapons striking with surgical precision. Every shot found its target, every movement was perfect. The Kelani people watched in amazement as their oppressors were destroyed by warriors from a distant world. Within minutes, the Imperial fleet was nothing but scattered wreckage, and the Kelani were free for the first time in 200 years. Their leader, an elderly blue woman named Thera, sent a message to the human fleet. "We have been waiting 2 centuries for someone to stand up to the Empire," she said. "You have given us hope. What can we do to help you free the galaxy?" Similar scenes began playing out on worlds across the Empire. The humans did not just fight battles. They liberated entire civilizations. Every species they freed became an ally. Every victory inspired new rebellions. The empire that had seemed invincible was beginning to crack, and the cracks were spreading faster than anyone could stop them. 6 months had passed since the first battle, and the galaxy looked completely different than before. News of human victories spread from world to world like wildfire. Species that had never dared to dream of freedom were now building secret armies. Children who had been born into slavery were learning what the word liberty meant. Emperor Vextar sat in his throne room surrounded by reports of disaster after disaster. Half of his empire was in open rebellion. 17 core worlds had declared independence. His own nobles were beginning to question his leadership, and some were secretly planning to remove him from power. "This is impossible," he raged, throwing data tablets across the room. "How can primitive humans be destroying my empire? They were supposed to be our slaves, not our conquerors. We have ruled this galaxy for 10,000 years. His science advisor Clix trembled as he approached the throne. The spider-like creature had spent weeks analyzing human technology, and the results terrified him. "Emperor," he said in a voice that shook with fear, "our analysis shows that humans have been preparing for interstellar war much longer than we thought. Their technology is not primitive. It is simply different from ours." The Emperor wanted to kill the messenger, but he needed to understand what was happening. How different? He demanded. What could make such a weak species so dangerous? Clix displayed holographic images of human weapons and ships. "They do not rely on energy shields like we do," he explained. "Instead, they use speed and stealth to avoid damage. They do not build massive ships like ours. Instead, they build many smaller vessels that work together. Their weapons are not designed to overpower defenses, but to bypass them completely." This was the truth that the Empire could not accept. Humans did not fight the way other species fought. They had learned different lessons from their history of warfare. Every human conflict had taught them new ways to think about problems. The aliens had expected humans to fight like aliens, but humans fought like humans. Meanwhile, Admiral Kang Seo commanded a fleet that had grown to over 2,000 ships from dozens of different species. Former slaves worked alongside human crews. Learning and teaching each other, the Liberation Fleet was becoming something the galaxy had never seen before, a truly united force fighting for freedom general. Song Min-ho now coordinated military operations across 50 star systems from his command. Ship every day brought new allies and new victories. The Kalani people contributed their advanced sensor technology. The rock-like granite people shared their heavy weapons designs. The energy beings called Luminari offered shield improvements. We are not conquering the galaxy, Song told his staff during a strategy meeting. We are liberating it. There is a difference. When you conquer, you create enemies. When you liberate, you create friends. And friends fight harder than slaves ever could. The difference was becoming clear in every battle. Imperial forces fought because they were ordered to fight. They followed commands and tried not to die. Liberation forces fought because they believed in their cause. They took risks and made sacrifices that no slave army could match. Dr. Park Hyeon had established diplomatic relations with hundreds of species from her position as Earth's ambassador to the new Galactic Liberation Council. She offered them something the Empire never had: equality and freedom. Every species, no matter how small or weak, had an equal voice in decisions. We do not want to rule the galaxy, she explained to a gathering of former slave leaders. We want every species to be free to choose their own path. That is what makes us strong, not our weapons, but our principles. When everyone fights for the same dream, the dream becomes unstoppable. Captain Oh Yuna led a joint human Kalani task force to liberate the crystal cities of Andromeda, where the Empire had been harvesting sentient crystals for their computing power. The crystal beings had been treated as resources instead of people for 800 years. The battle was different from previous engagements because the crystal beings could communicate directly with human computers. Their living consciousness merged with human artificial intelligence, creating a hybrid system that could predict enemy movements before they happened. We have never experienced such cooperation, said the Crystal Elder Zephyros to Oh Yuna. After the liberation, you treat us as equals, not as tools. This is why your species succeeds where the Empire fails. You understand that strength comes from unity, not domination. Similar partnerships were forming throughout the galaxy. The plant-like Verdani people shared biological technologies that could heal human injuries in minutes. The aquatic depths dwellers provided underwater-based designs. The flying ethers offered atmospheric combat techniques. Every new alliance made the Liberation Fleet stronger, but more importantly, it made the Empire weaker. Imperial commanders could no longer predict what weapons or tactics they would face. Each battle brought new surprises as former slaves contributed their unique abilities to the fight. Emperor Vexstar called an emergency meeting of his remaining loyal governors. The holographic conference room was much emptier than it had been a year ago. Many seats belonged to worlds that were now free or in rebellion. We must change our strategy, he declared. The humans are not fighting like we expected. They are turning our own subjects against us. We need to negotiate a peace treaty before we lose everything. Fleet Admiral Draxon disagreed with his Emperor negotiation shows weakness. He argued we should gather our remaining forces and crush Earth before this rebellion spreads further. If we destroy their homeworld, the other species will surrender. This was exactly the wrong thing to say because intelligence officer Kim Nari was monitoring all Imperial communications from her stealth ship. She immediately reported the conversation to Admiral Kang Seok-thi. Are planning to attack Earth directly, she warned. The Emperor is losing control and his military leaders want to end this war by destroying our home world. Admiral Kang received this news while coordinating the liberation of 3-star systems. Simultaneously, he had been expecting this moment. The Empire was becoming desperate and desperate enemies did desperate things. Send a message to Earth. He ordered Telvin to activate all planetary defenses and recall the home fleet. The Empire is going to make one final attempt to win this war and prepare our forces for the largest battle in galactic history. The stage was being set for a confrontation that would decide the fate of every living being in the galaxy. The Empire would gather its remaining forces for one last strike at Earth, while the Liberation Fleet would have to defend not just a planet, but an idea, the idea that no one was inferior and everyone deserved to be free. The tide had turned, but the war was not over. The biggest battle was yet to come, and everything humanity had fought for would be decided in the space around. Their homeworld, the Empire, was about to learn that attacking Earth was the biggest mistake they could possibly make. The final battle began when Emperor Vextar gathered every remaining ship in his empire around the imperial capital world. He had nearly 1 million vessels surrounding the planet in desperate defensive formations. This was everything he had left. After months of defeats and rebellions across the galaxy, Admiral Kang Seok approached the system with the largest liberation fleet ever assembled. 10,000 ships from 60 different species flew together in perfect coordination. Humans worked alongside Kelani engineers. Granite warriors served next to luminary energy beings. Former enemies had become brothers and sisters in the fight for freedom. The sight was magnificent and terrifying. Human ships with their sleek silver hulls flew beside crystal vessels that sparkled like diamonds. Organic ships grown by plant species moved next to geometric craft built by machine intelligences. Every shape and color imaginable filled the space around the imperial capital. This is Admiral Kang II. All Imperial forces, he broadcast across every communication channel. Your empire is finished. Your slaves are free. Surrender now, and you will be treated with justice. Continue fighting, and you will be defeated. We offer you one chance to end this. Without more bloodshed, Emperor Vextar's reply came filled with rage and madness. You will not take my empire, he screamed. I am the supreme ruler of the galaxy. I have commanded these stars for 10,000 years. You are nothing but inferior primitives. Who got lucky? Those words were the Emperor's final mistake. He had learned nothing from his defeats. He still believed that calling others inferior made him superior. He could not understand that his empire had fallen because it was built on lies. About superiority and inferiority, the battle lasted 3 days and 3 nights. Imperial forces fought with the fury of cornered animals, but they were outmatched in every way. The Liberation Fleet had better technology, better coordination, and most importantly, they had something worth fighting for. On the first day, the outer defensive lines collapsed. Human railguns tore through Imperial shields, while Kelani sensors guided every shot to its target. Granite heavy weapons smashed through armor that had never been penetrated before. The Emperor lost 200,000 ships and barely damaged the Liberation Fleet. On the second day, the middle defenses fell. Luminary energy beings merged with human computer systems, creating tactical awareness that could predict enemy movements minutes before they happened. Plant species released bioweapons that shut down Imperial life support systems. The Emperor lost another 300,000 ships. On the third day, the final assault began. Liberation forces pushed through the last Imperial defenses toward the capital world itself. Emperor Vextar watched from his palace as his mighty fleet was systematically destroyed by species he had considered worthless. In the end, only 50,000 Imperial ships remained, and they were surrounded by the full Liberation Fleet. The Emperor sat on his throne and realized that everything he had believed about superiority was wrong. The inferior species had proven themselves superior in every way that mattered. Admiral Kang offered surrender terms one final time, but the Emperor refused to accept defeat. Even when his own nobles begged him to stop the fighting, he ordered his remaining ships to continue the hopeless battle. They died obediently because they were still slaves to his will. The liberation of the capital world took only 6 hours. Imperial ground forces surrendered as soon as liberation troops landed. The Emperor's own guards opened the palace doors and handed him over to human soldiers. They had finally understood that following a madman was not loyalty. Emperor Vextar was taken to a holding cell where he sat in silence for hours, staring at the walls that had once contained his enemies. Now he was the prisoner, and his former slaves were his judges. The irony was not lost on anyone who witnessed his downfall. Dr. Park Hin arrived at the capital to help organize the new government. She walked through halls that had once been forbidden to anyone the Emperor considered inferior. Now representatives from every species in the galaxy worked together to build something better. The trial of Emperor Vextar lasted only 1 day. The evidence of his crimes was overwhelming. 10,000 years of slavery and oppression had left clear records. Billions of beings had suffered under his rule, and their voices finally had a chance to be heard. But The Liberation Council surprised everyone with their sentence. The Emperor would not be executed or tortured, instead he would be sent to a rehabilitation world where he would learn what he had never understood, that every thinking being had value and deserved respect. This is what makes us different from the Empire, said Dr. Park during the sentencing. We do not solve problems with cruelty, we solve them with justice and education. Even our worst enemy deserves the chance to become better. The former emperor was taken away in chains, but he would live to see the galaxy transformed by the principles he had rejected. His empire was truly finished, but the beings who had defeated him proved that victory did not have to mean vengeance. Intelligence Officer Kim Nari coordinated the massive task of freeing every remaining slave world in the Galaxy Liberation Fleet spread out across thousands of star systems, bringing the news that the Empire was over and everyone was free. The response was overwhelming. Beings who had never known freedom celebrated in ways that each species found meaningful. Crystal beings sang harmonies that made stars shimmer. Plant people bloomed in colors that painted entire worlds. Machine intelligences calculated poems of pure mathematics. But liberation was only the beginning. The real work was building something better than what had come before. Representatives from every species met to create a new galactic government based on equality and cooperation instead of domination and fear. General Song Min-ho oversaw the transition of military forces from liberation armies to peacekeeping fleets. The galaxy needed protection from anyone who might try to rebuild the old empire, but it also needed proof that the new government would not become another tyranny. We are not replacing one empire with another, he told his officers. We are creating something that has never existed before, a galaxy where every species has a voice, where every individual matters, where no one is called inferior ever again. The work was hard and sometimes frustrating. Species that had been enemies for centuries had to learn to trust each other. Former slaves had to learn how to govern themselves. Former soldiers had to learn how to build instead of destroy. But slowly, steadily, the new galaxy took shape. Trade networks reopened, but now as partnerships between equals. Cultural exchanges began as species shared their arts and sciences. Defense pacts formed based on mutual protection rather than fear. Captain Oyuna was chosen to lead the new galactic peacekeeping force. Her ships would patrol the galaxy, ensuring that no new empire could rise to threaten freedom. She accepted the responsibility, knowing that eternal vigilance was the price of liberty. The transformation took 2 years to complete, but when it was finished, the galaxy was unrecognizable. The same stars shone in the same sky, but everything else had changed. Fear had been replaced by hope. Slavery had been replaced by cooperation. Empires had been replaced by federations, and at the center of it all was the lesson that humanity had taught the galaxy: no one was superior, no one was inferior. Every thinking being deserved respect, freedom, and the chance to reach their full potential. This was the revolution that had started when aliens called humans inferior and regretted it immediately. 5 years had passed since the fall of the Empire, and the galaxy had become something that no one could have imagined. The Galactic Federation met in a great space station that orbited the star where the old Imperial capital had been, but this station was different from the Emperor's palace. It was built by cooperation, not conquest. Dr. Park Haen stood before the Federation Council as Earth's representative, but she was no longer just speaking for humanity. She had become the voice of every species that believed in freedom. The council chamber was filled with beings from across the galaxy, all equal partners in the new government. We have learned the most important lesson in galactic history, she said to the assembled representatives. Calling anyone inferior is always a sign of weakness, not strength. True power comes from working together, from respecting differences, from protecting those who need protection. The council members listened with respect and attention. Kelani engineers sat next to granite warriors. Crystal beings shared space with plant people. Energy entities floated beside mechanical intelligences. Every voice mattered, every opinion was heard, every species had dignity. Former Emperor Vextar watched the proceedings from his rehabilitation center on a peaceful world where he was learning what he had never understood in 10,000 years of rule. He saw beings he had called inferior solving problems that his empire had never been able to fix. They are doing what I could never do, said to his counselor, a gentle human woman named Lisu, who helped him understand his mistakes. They are making the galaxy work for everyone, not just for those in power. I spent my life believing that strength meant making others weak. The rehabilitation program was working slowly but surely. The former emperor was beginning to understand that his greatest failure had not been losing the war, but never recognizing the value of every living being. His empire had been built on a lie, and lies always fall eventually. Admiral Kong Seok had retired to a small farm on Earth where he grew vegetables and watched the sunset. He had become the most famous military commander in galactic history, but he preferred the quiet life of a farmer. Visitors from across the galaxy came to meet the human who had sparked the greatest liberation ever known. Young colony officer named Zephyr visited him one day and asked the question that everyone wanted answered: how did you know you could defeat the Empire? How did humans find the courage to fight when the odds were impossible? Kang smiled and looked up at the stars that were now free. We did not know we could win, he said honestly. We just knew we had to try. That is what makes humans human. We do not accept being told we are inferior. We fight for what is right even when everyone says it is hopeless. The lesson had spread throughout the galaxy. Young beings of every species learned about the day when humans proved that no one was superior or inferior. They learned that courage was not the absence of fear, but acting in spite of fear. They learned that the greatest victories came from defending others, not conquering them. Captain Oyuna commanded the Federation peacekeeping fleet from her flagship, the New Horizon. Her crews included beings from hundreds of different worlds working together to protect the freedom that had been won with so much sacrifice. The fleet was powerful, but it served the people instead of ruling them. We are not conquerors, she told new recruits during their training. We are guardians. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. We stop those who would return to the old ways of empire and slavery. Remember that every being in this galaxy deserves to live free. The economic transformation was just as dramatic as the political one. Trade flourished between worlds that had been enemies for centuries. Technologies were shared freely instead of being hoarded by ruling classes. Scientific discoveries belonged to everyone, not just to those with power. Young engineer Nam Su had become the director of the Galactic Technology Sharing Program. His office received thousands of innovations every day from species across the galaxy. The crystal beings had developed new computing methods the plant people had created biological healing techniques. The energy entities had discovered ways to travel between dimensions. This is what happens when everyone is free to think and create. He explained to visitors, knowledge grows faster when it is shared. Every species has unique perspectives that can solve problems others cannot even see. The cultural renaissance was equally amazing. Art and music and literature flowed between worlds in ways that the Empire had never allowed. Colony painters created works that captured the beauty of human emotions. Granite sculptors carved monuments to freedom that could be seen from space. Plant composers grew symphonies that bloomed with the seasons. Dr. Park Hyan established the Galactic University where beings from every species could learn from each other. The campus was a space station that traveled between star systems, bringing education to everyone. Students who had been slaves now became teachers. Scientists who had been forbidden to share their knowledge now collaborated on projects that benefited the entire galaxy. This most important change was not in technology or politics or culture. It was in the hearts and minds of every thinking being in the galaxy. The idea that some people were superior and others were inferior had been replaced by the understanding that everyone had value. Children who were born after liberation grew up in a galaxy where diversity was celebrated instead of feared. They played together, learned together, and dreamed together regardless of what species they belonged to. The old prejudices were dying out as new generations discovered the joy of cooperation, but the new galaxy was not perfect. There were still problems to solve, conflicts to resolve, challenges to overcome. Some beings still believed in the old ways of thinking. Some groups tried to create new empires. Some individuals sought power over others. This is why we must remain vigilant, said General Song Minho, who now served as the Director of Galactic Security. Freedom is not something you win once and keep forever. It must be protected and renewed by every generation. We must never forget the lessons of the Empire. The Federation had learned from humanity's example that eternal vigilance was indeed the price of liberty. Early warning systems monitored for signs of new tyrannies. Rapid Response teams could reach any threatened world within hours. Educational programs taught the principles of freedom to every child. 10 years after liberation, the galaxy celebrated the anniversary of the Empire's fall. Beings gathered on every world to remember those who had died in the struggle and to pledge that such suffering would never happen again. The celebration on Earth was particularly meaningful. Admiral Kong spoke to a crowd that included representatives from every Federation world. We did not fight to prove that humans were superior, he said. We fought to prove that no one is superior, everyone is equal, everyone deserves respect, everyone has the right to be free. Emperor Vexstar was allowed to attend the ceremony via hologram from his rehabilitation center. He had requested permission to speak, and after much debate, the Federation Council had agreed. His words surprised everyone who heard them. I spent 10,000 years believing that some beings were better than others, he said, his voice filled with genuine remorse. I was wrong about everything. The humans and their allies did not defeat my empire with superior weapons. They defeated it with superior principles. I apologize to every being who suffered under my rule. The apology was accepted by the Federation Council, but more importantly, it was accepted by the former slaves who had lived under his tyranny. Forgiveness was another lesson that humanity had taught the galaxy. Healing was more powerful than hatred. Understanding was stronger than revenge. As the celebration continued across the galaxy, one truth was clear. The species that had been called inferior had transformed not just themselves, but everyone they touched. The humans had proven that the greatest strength was not the power to dominate others, but the wisdom to lift them up. The galaxy was free, and it would stay free because beings throughout the stars had learned the most important lesson of all. No one is inferior, everyone has value, and together we are stronger than any empire that ever was or ever could be. Stars themselves seemed to shine brighter, knowing that every world beneath them was home to beings who lived in freedom, dignity, and hope. The greatest victory in galactic history was not the defeat of an empire, but the birth of an idea that would last forever.